All right, peace and greetings, YouTubers. So Daunte Wright. At this point, what we know and what many of us have seen is there's a video of this man being shot and killed by the police. The police officer that shot and killed him is claiming that she thought she had her taser and it was all an accident. At this point, the officer, Kim Potter, has been charged. And now we go into what you call that cycle where you see a tragedy happen. It goes viral. Of course, it's usually a situation where there's somebody black and unarmed who gets killed by the police. And then the next thing that happens is there's the outrage, but to counter the outrage, there's all the people who run in with the justifications about why things happen the way they happen. Because in this country, it's easy to justify why black people should deserve to be killed at all times for doing any and everything. That's just kind of what happens in this country. Black people, we don't get the luxury to have any element of grace. Everything that happens to us, we've brought on ourselves. That's literally the narrative that's put out there. And so you constantly see the same situation where once somebody has been killed by the police, the next move is dig into their past and find everything you can find to justify why they deserve to die. And most of the time, none of these offenses are even anything that would correlate to a punishment of death anyway, because a lot of these are not capital crimes, but they latch onto everything. Oh, you know, he took somebody's milk money when he was 8. Oh, back in the day, he shoplifted, you know, from Kmart and took a pack of markers when he was 9. Really, what happened was he just put it in the back of the shopping cart and forgot it was at the bottom, and then he walked out of the store. But, you know, they got story after story for anybody, and, you know, they will find different things. And even if they can't find anything on them, they'll find something on the family. Oh, well, you know, the dad was a drug addict, or the mom used to sell drugs, or she was a prostitute. They will find something just to kind of paint that narrative that goes to the story of black people being violent and not being deserving of grace or even deserving of having a voice or being seen as actual human beings. We know that that happens. And so in this case, of course, because in the video they're saying, well, he's resisting arrest, that's the justification for why he deserves to die. And you're seeing people say that. So this is what we want to do, because I want to jump and kind of shut that conversation down about resisting, because we've seen multiple videos of white people doing literally the exact same thing and living to tell about it, even doing worse. So I want to go to 2 videos really quick before I jump into my argument. So let's jump to video 1.
Put your hand on the steering wheel.
No.
What are you reaching for?
Oh, whoa. Hey,
get out of the car, man. You got a gun right there.
Whoa.
Get out of the car.
There's rights to this.
Get out.
I will send this dog on you.
I will shoot you if you do.
Don't fucking drop that gun.
You have rights.
Put your hand.
You have rights too. You have rights too.
Don't you dare.
You have rights. You
Right.
cannot
Don't you
shoot me
dare.
here.
You
It is
need to
unconstitutional.
You need to get out of the
No,
car
I
so
do
we
not.
can remove you
I
from
do
that
not.
weapon.
You cannot. No, it is constitutionally owned. I see that.
You have a concealed carry permit.
It is not concealed.
Yes,
You
you
can
did.
see the weapon. It's right there.
Don't
Body
do
cam.
it.
Body cam.
Okay.
What are you right
Just
Yes, we do.
don't. Just please.
You have body cam.
Please.
You have body cam. Do not forcibly remove
Do not.
me from
Don't.
the- Whoa.
Do it.
You know
Don't.
that. You know that. That's not
Please.
not
I need you to get out of the car.
House. Ben, house.
Hey, I see double blue, sir. They're gonna shoot me on double blue?
Just relax.
Myself, cast a doctrine. You know that.
We'll get this figured out. Don't do it. Please. Just come on.
Get out of the car, sir.
Just get out of the car. Just step out.
The gun's down.
No, just step
Get
out.
out of the car.
Just step out of the car. Just don't do it.
Get out of the car.
You're on double blue. You know what's gonna happen, right?
Just stop.
You need to get out of the car. That's
No,
a
I
lawful
don't.
order. You're going to go to
What,
jail.
a gunpoint? Oh, take me to jail then. Go ahead.
Just come
Now
on.
you're obstructing.
I can't.
No, you're obstructing. You're pointing a gun at me, sir. Right now, my life's in threat.
Okay. Well, we have.
I don't even see body cam on this, sir. I'm just gonna drive away.
we-
I'm not gonna bother anybody.
No, you're
Hands
not.
on the seat.
Don't do this.
No.
Don't do it. Don't.
You see the level of patience that was there. Now, mind you, the original video is about 3 minutes and 30 seconds. But in this video, you see the police literally using please. You know, all of a sudden there's grace and manners. You know, there's courtesy with how they enforce the law. You know, there's a man who has a gun, because he had a gun in the car, and he's pretty much saying, well, I'm not listening, I'm not doing this, I'm just going to drive off. Oh, please don't do this. I'm just like, wow, the amount of grace that is given to some people, and so on and so forth. I'm just like, wow, you know, if this were Daunte, you know, pretty much, which, again, this is the same situation, only the difference between that guy and Daunte is Daunte didn't have a weapon, Daunte is no longer here. But again, the justification. Let's go to the next video.
Oh my God. Oh, hell no. The cop is on there!
Now this one is even more interesting, because one of the main excuses and justifications that police often use when they've shot and killed somebody unarmed that was black and they need a justification is, I feared for my life. I thought my life was in danger. And if it wasn't caught on video, he reached for my gun. You know, the body cam was turned off or nobody was out recording. He reached for my gun. I was afraid. You know, somebody we were stopping who literally had a charge because, I don't know, they had 2 traffic violations and they didn't appear in court. And so even if they would have gone to jail, it would have just been a fine and they'd go home the next day. You know, somehow that person is going to go ahead and reach for the gun and kill the officer over a few $100s because, again, it paints the narrative of black Americans and black men specifically just being so inherently violent that you don't know what they're capable of doing. I had to do the best I had to do what I could do because, again, in my job, our goal is to get home to our family. You know, they push all that out there and, you know, shift the whole narrative and paint the police out to be victims. But in this case, what is so interesting is you literally see the 61-year-old white man using his vehicle as a weapon, and by any means necessary, he is willing to break free and escape. So you would think that this would be the moment when the force would come out. It doesn't have to be lethal. It could be the taser, however they want to do it, but there's nothing. And so you think the police would use it then, but nothing. And then you watch him pull off with a cop who's holding on to the vehicle, and now that cop's life is in danger, and ain't nobody doing nothing. I said, you know what? Wow, interesting. And so that's why I'm like, you know, I just don't buy it. And so for the duration of this video, just to continue my point, I'm just going to have some footage of people who are pretty much all white Americans that have resisted arrest and lived to tell about it. And so we'll just have that playing on the side while I continue my argument just to prove my point, because I'm tired of people always coming onto these videos and they want to find a justification, because again, in this country, people will find every reason on earth to justify why black people deserve to die at the hands of the police, even for the most minor infractions. For them, it's normalized, it's the routine, it's the status quo, and it's appropriate. And so when you challenge it, they try to bombard you and shut you up because they're so used to buying into a system that oppresses others, because again, they benefit from it. And so the other issue is people are asking for grace for the officer. Kim Potter, it was a mistake. You know, she thought she was reaching for the taser. You know, simple mistake. Things happen all the time. And I'm just like, you know what? It will be different if the police didn't have a pattern of this same kind of foolery, and there wasn't a pattern of all kind of foul activity taking place, and then the police coming up with BS excuses every time to justify it, and then America buys into it, and then the police get away with it. It would be different if that wasn't the case in America, but that is the case in America, so I'm sorry, I can't buy that, because we've just seen too many instances where things happen that don't make sense, and the police get to come up with any kind of excuse, almost like default excuses that are accepted both in court and by public opinion, and then everything moves on like nothing happened. And then you have families who no longer have loved ones and have to see their relatives, because of course when we talk about that cycle, we have to see their relatives splattered all around the internet and on news cycles and painted out to be villains. And so it makes me think of, even the situation with other people who have died at the hands of police in the same conversation of they thought it was a taser. You had Eric Harris in Tulsa, Oklahoma, shot in the back while he was laying down. The officer said, "Oh, I thought it was my taser." And I found that interesting, because if you shoot somebody in the back while they're on the ground, you literally can see the gun that you're holding as you're aiming it and shooting somebody in the back. So something like, "Sir, you couldn't tell that you didn't have the right gun in your hand? Okay, next." And then you have she didn't actually die. She still lived to tell about it. But Ashley Hall, who again shot in the back by a police officer who was like, "Oh, I thought it was my taser." I'm like, okay, here we go again. That same narrative. And then Oscar Grant, which is the one that pretty much everybody's familiar with. There was even a movie about it. Same situation. Shot and killed at the subway. "I thought I had my taser." And it's just like, okay. And then what's crazy with that one is the officer that killed Oscar Grant, literally, he had pretty much the same sentence that Michael Vick got for the situation with the dog fighting. I was like, dang, even the dogs get more justice than black folks in this country. And so it's just like excuse after excuse. And then sometimes they have some excuses that are so out of pocket, you're like, what the heck? Like Travis Carter in Arkansas, where he's arrested for a marijuana charge. Literally a marijuana charge, misdemeanor, literally. And he's cuffed in the back of the police car. They find him with a gunshot wound to the head. And they try to claim and say, "Oh, well, he killed himself." You mean to tell me that somebody killed himself over a marijuana charge, where, again, it would have probably been just a fine or maybe a day or two in jail? I don't think so. Secondly, how do you frisk somebody 2 times, put them in the back of the police cruiser, they're handcuffed, and somehow they're able to maneuver and grab this weapon that at one point was not found on their person at all, but now all of a sudden they are able to find a weapon, cock it back, aim it perfectly, and take their own life? Y'all be playing these games in our faces and thinking we're stupid, and this is why people don't buy into all of that. And so with her and the justification of the taser versus the gun, it's like they don't even look alike. You got this bright yellow taser. You mean to tell me that you thought this was your actual gun? And people are going to sit here and try to say, "Oh, well, she yelled, taser, taser, taser." How do we know she doesn't do that every time she shoots somebody? How do we know she doesn't use that excuse as insurance just to kind of cover herself ahead of time? Don't think that some of these police are stupid. Some of them know what they're doing. They recognize that they have a system that backs them and helps them to get away with this. This era we're in, where police are finally starting to get charged for, killing people unarmed, this is new. This is like all within the last 2 or 3 years. I told you guys, I think some years back, about like the state of Florida, where over the span of like 15 or 20 years, you had like 600 police killings where they killed somebody unjustifiably who was unarmed, and only 2 of the police were charged. And so this is all new, but they're used to a system that's there that usually protects and backs them. And I'll be honest, there's a strong possibility that she will probably get away with this. I'm telling you right now, just be ready for it. I don't want to put it out there, but it is something to think about. And so it's just absolutely crazy. And so that's why when people constantly try to break their neck to justify or try to create scenarios to make it seem like, oh, the officers were just acting in their own best interest and to be safe, I don't want to hear it. I just really don't. And again, people can try to say, oh, well, this kid, he had warrants. What does that have to do with what we saw in the video? You know what I mean? What does it have to do with anything? And even with those warrants, those don't equate to capital punishment. They don't. So why do you keep making that excuse? It's like people try to create scenarios that exist, and I think that's because as black people in this country, it's like we're burdened with the expectation and the assumption of being violent from the jump. It's just assumed that we're going to be violent. This is why even when it comes to children, this is why the suspension rates are so high for black children. A lot of times people in education, they don't even know how to work with black children. They assume that a black child that is opinionated or that is high energy or that has a lot going on is just automatically violent. And then so on and so forth. And so you see these high suspension levels. And if they're not suspending them, they're throwing everybody in remedial courses or putting them in special ed because they think that they have behavioral problems. And because the teacher doesn't know how to manage them, something must be wrong with them. So put them in that room with the other students where they're in a classroom with 4 other students. They do it all the time. And so they create these scenarios where we are just so extreme in our behavior. And it's like, again, that burden of just automatically being violent. It's kind of like, this is the most left field example, but remember that episode of Good Times where Michael had the white girl that was the roommate? And the only reason that the white girl's parents wanted him to be her roommate was because they assumed that he could fight. You know, oh, he'll be able to protect her because the daughter was going to be living in Chicago and, you know, it's Chicago. And so, yeah, let's put her in a space with a black man. He'll protect them. And it's like, oh, really? The nerve. But again, it's like they create these scenarios that they think are going to happen. And so, you know, people will latch on and say, oh, well, you know, he had warrants and we don't know what he was going to do if he got in that police car. He might have when he got in his car, he might have taken his car and driven and drove and took people hostage. And next thing you know, this has turned into a scene out of the movie Chase. And now he's taking a bus and there's a bomb on the bus and the bus has to keep going and it can't go below 50 miles an hour or it will explode. Like people literally latch on all of that and put all of that on us because we're just so capable of nothing but violence. We're just all crazy around here. It's just foolery. I'm over all of it. So we'll see how this unfolds. And it's so sad to have to continue to see, you know, people mourn their families, you know, on national TV. And again, like I said before, I don't care what you want to bring up about this kid's past or whatever it is that he has going. Does not matter. It does not equate to dying. If that's the case, let the judicial system do its thing. You don't get to be, you know, enforcer and freaking Grim Reaper at the same time. Your job is just to enforce the law by pretty much taking people into custody and letting the justice system do its thing, which again, all that's some BS too. But it's just like, it's foolery. And so please, spare me all the foolery and the bullcrap about resisting. Not after we just saw all those clips playing to the side of people doing the same thing and living to tell about it. Anyway, I'm out. Share your 2 cents. Subscribe.
Is that you?